interesting things. Okay, so I'm recording now, so I'll put it up on YouTube afterwards. So we have it. I already gave the link to the playlist, but I'll repost it in Slack just in case folks missed it. All right, so let me start with this. I'm just going to share my entire screen in theory. There we go. All right, so can you guys see my screen right now?
Yeah.
All right, so a project that I like using as kind of a first project to kind of experience the software development lifecycle is a dice roller. So I used to play a lot of tabletop Dungeons and Dragons, where you bring your bag of dice and you throw 3d20 or 2d6 and stuff like that. And so there's lots of online tools out there for doing this type of thing. But it'd be kind of cool if we can go to one of these gaming sessions and bring our iPhone with us or something like that, and be able to kind of dial in and not have to bring a big bag of dice. Now, at the end of the day, if you don't really think that's cool, that's fine, but at the very least, it's an interesting, easy enough to conceive of project that we can keep adding features onto, and this is going to kind of complement the coursework that you're working through. But what I wanted you to see as part of our session, and also a way for you to give feedback while we're going through this, is kind of the mindset of software development. So what we're going to do is we're going to start an application from scratch today. And now you guys, I think, have mostly still been working in the storyboard, correct? Or some of you actually in Xcode doing some stuff? So not the storyboard, not storyboard, the playground rather.
Yeah, they were a little thrown off when you said storyboard. Okay.
Yeah, so you guys have been working in the playground, and we're going to start going into Xcode, which is what you guys will end up doing. But you're going to see this process, the software development lifecycle type process, come together. So when we meet, we'll take any questions, and we'll just continue adding on to this project, bringing in some interesting features. So if I'm kind of talking through, what we might do. Initially, today we're going to build a simple kind of skeleton version of this app with some buttons, and when we click the buttons, things will happen. And then we're going to make those buttons do things that are kind of more appropriate to what we want them to do, rolling random numbers and this type of stuff. Eventually, we're going to start dealing with how do we show our stuff on our screen and remember old roles, be able to save kind of common roles. So if you play Dungeons and Dragons, something you might do is you might say, well, whenever I attack, I always roll 3d6 plus 4, something like that. So you might want to kind of dial in that roll and save it so it's easy for you to roll that same roll again in the future. Stuff like that. Well, then we want to be able to start bringing in third-party data. And it's going to be a little bit of a stretch in a dice roller, but for instance, we might want to bring in some information from the Weather Channel. And maybe we get a different color visual dice on the screen depending on what the current weather is outside. So our app is a little bit interactive from that perspective. And those are just some high-level ideas that I've been kind of kicking around. But as we get into this and as we work on this kind of as a team during our sessions, I'm going to ask you questions as like, what should this interface look like? How do we actually want our screen to lay out? What color should this be? How do you imagine delivering this information to the user? So you can kind of go through that process with me and then see it come together on the screen. That makes some sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So having said that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and start a brand new project. And then at the end, I'm also going to put it up to GitHub, and we'll talk about that a little bit. That's something that you will learn as well. So it's a way for you to be able to check out this project and mess with it on your own if you'd like.
Hey, Mike.
Yep.
Do you want to just follow along with you, or do you want us to do like a code along on our own computers?
You can. You can follow along if you'd like. We'll end up going a little bit slower that way. Is that okay? Or would you rather them follow the video later where they could take their time and pause and stuff like that? What's best in your opinion?
Okay, look, let's follow along. Let's make it interactive so they can follow along.
Okay, sounds fair. All right, so everybody has their laptop open then?
Yeah.
All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and open up Xcode. So get Xcode open. And here, I'm gonna close Xcode and I'm gonna reopen it so we're sitting at that same start screen. All right, so you should be sitting at a screen that looks kind of like this.
Yeah.
All right, so this is the way I start every single project that I ever work on for iPhone. So this next couple of steps. So we're going to start by creating a new Xcode project. And that's going to take us to a window that looks like this. And make sure we have iOS selected up here in the upper left, because we have iOS, watchOS, tvOS, and OS X. So we want iOS selected and select application. It was probably pre-selected for you, but just in case it wasn't, make sure that's what's selected. Now, these are various kind of starting templates that we can use when we create an application. The one I always start with is single view application. This is the emptiest starting point for us. All right, so go ahead and select that. And that's going to bring you to a place where we can go and actually name our project. So I'm going to name this project, let's call it SCH Dice Roller. Is it yeah, SCH is the name of the school, right?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I got it. So SCH Dice Roller. And the language should be Swift. It probably already says that. Devices, universal is fine. Probably already says that. Make sure use core data is turned off. Doesn't matter if it's turned on. It's not going to hurt anything, but we're not going to use that either. So basically, the default settings for this is going to be fine. So go ahead and hit next, and this is going to ask us where we want to store this project. So put it on a place on your computer where you can find it later. So I'm going to create a new folder on here.
No, it's on your notes.
All right. Now, one thing it's going to do is it's probably going to have a checkbox down here that says Create Git Repository on my Mac. And just make sure that box is checked. We're going to end up using that. It's probably checked by default, but make sure it is. So we're going to go ahead and hit Create, and this is going to generate for us a blank project.
Yeah, it's like that. We're good, Mike.
Okay. So now we're on this screen. So the very first thing we should do is make sure everything set up the right way. So up top here, you should see something. If we click on this, it shows us that we have one target scheme. It's already set up. Should be called SCH Dice Roller. And then what's next to it is the simulator we want to run this in. The default is 6S Plus, and that's going to be huge and take forever to launch. So I almost always select the iPhone 6S. If you're on an older computer, you might choose an iPhone 5, something like that. But 6S is what I'm always going to choose. That's going to take up less of our screen because it's not the gigantic iPhone. So once you select the correct simulator to test our app in, let's go ahead and just hit play. So this is going to build our application, launch it in the simulator, and it should look like a blank application that's just sitting on the screen. So as long as nothing breaks, then we'll have confidence that at least it ran. Yeah, my simulator was already launched, so it might. Right now, your simulator might look like it has a black screen, and then it's going to start showing the loading bar. So after 30 seconds or so, it should finish launching, but it'll just be an empty blank thing like this. So if it's already launching, just trust it'll work and just leave it in the background, and that'll let your simulator finish loading because we're going to add some more stuff to this anyways. All right, so go ahead and click back to Xcode here and just let your simulator keep cooking. So let's explain a couple of these files that are available to us over here. So our project comes with 3 files to start with. One's called appdelegate.swift, one's called viewcontroller.swift, and one's called main storyboard. Okay, the main storyboard, this is where we're going to design all of our stuff. All right, so we're going to make our interfaces look pretty over here. and then we're going to write software that makes those interfaces actually function over here. Okay? So we're going to start with our storyboard. Well, actually, before I do that, let me just tell you about this app delegate a little bit. We're not going to use it right now, but in the future we will. This app delegate, this code, specifically this function in here, the one that says did finish launching with options, this is your very first opportunity to do any sort of programming as it relates to your iPhone application. Okay, so this function gets called before anything else in your application happens. So when we start bringing in weather data or pictures from Instagram, stuff like that, we'll probably do some of that initial setup inside of this function. But right now we're not doing that. We don't need to do anything that happens before the screen shows up, so we're not going to touch this, but that's what that app delegate is for. Okay, this is our initial application setup. So we're going to go into our main storyboard, and it currently looks like this. We have a single view controller sitting on our screen. Our iPhone applications are made up of a collection of view controllers linked together. Okay? You can think, for right now, you can think of a view controller as being a screen in your application. The very first thing I do, we're going to go ahead and select one of these view controllers. We'll select the one view controller that's on there and select the little yellow circle thing. This is kind of your way of actually grabbing the view controller. You could also select it over here on the left. Those are the same. And I'm going to go up to these tabs up here in the upper right. And the one right in the middle that kind of looks like a shield, that's the one we're going to select. And we want to go to Simulated Metrics to Size. And we're going to choose iPhone 5.5 inch. So whenever I'm designing an iPhone app, I always design it for the biggest normal iPhone. So I design it for an iPhone 5.5 inch. And then it'll just shrink down for any other device. We're going to be talking about things like auto layout and stuff like that eventually. But I always just design for the biggest screen and then let it shrink down for smaller ones. Okay?
Like, hang on.
Sure.
Yeah. So, Mike, you said to change the size to what?
Change it to iPhone 5.5 inch.
Okay, that's where we're at.
Okay, and then your square should look more like an iPhone shape.
Right, guys? Yeah.
All right. So now, just for testing purposes, we're going to go ahead and we're going to come over here to the right. So the right-hand side is broken into two pieces. The top-hand side of this is the attributes associated with whatever you currently have clicked over here on your screen. So since I currently have my view controller clicked, this is showing me stuff related to that view controller. But if I click on the view part of this guy down here, everything we see on the screen is at some level something that's called a UI view. UI views are things that we see. So a label is a UI view, a button is a UI view. A view is a UI view. All right, so right now we're looking at this back view here. And we can go in here to our Properties tab. So this guy right here, the guy that looks like a shield, this is the Attribute Inspector. And if I want, I can change the background color of my view. So instead of it being white like that, we'll change it to pink. Okay, and now it looks like that. Now, on the right-hand side here, and you can change it whatever color you want. On the right-hand side here, we have, at the bottom, we have the various widgets that we can put into our application. All right, and we're going to learn only about a couple of these as we go along, but kind of our go-to widget is always going to be a label. This guy right here. This lets us just put something on the screen.
All right, you guys get stuck on something. Should you say? I've been stuck people. So my attention click on view. Yeah, here's click right here. Look at this. That has what to do. Then you can change the color right here. That's what we do.
So to change the color, we clicked on the actual view here, just out here in the middle. You can also get to it over here on the left, under the view controller where it says View. Think of this like the background canvas of this screen. This is the thing that we'll paint on. This is the thing we'll be drawing anything we want to draw on. So if we want to change the color of it, you'll click the view here, or you can just click out here in the middle of our view controller, which will let us grab that view. And then for the background color, you can set it to any color you want. You can leave it as white as well. I was just showing you can change the color. All right.
Okay, we're good.
All right, so now over here on the right is all of our widgets. These are all the things we can drag onto the screen. Now at the top here, these guys in yellow, these are our various, let's call it forms of view controllers. We're not going to mess with those right now. Well, we'll actually use one here in a few minutes, but for right now, we're going to deal with a single screen application. We would only use these yellow ones up here if we want to have another screen in our application. So we're going to start with our most basic widget, this label. So I'm going to click on this label, and I'm going to drag it out to my screen here. All right, now one common mistake that sometimes gets made, I'm going to zoom out here real quick. All right, so notice here that my view is much smaller on the screen right now. If I try to drag a label out here, it's not going to work. It's not going to land on there. Okay, this guy needs to be in the foreground. So if you ever can't drag something on there, double click on that view. And that'll bring it big again. And now this guy is like selected and in the foreground. And you should then be able to drag a label onto that screen. And then go ahead and just resize the label a little bit. And then you could either double click on it to write some text. We'll say hello world. Or you could click on it and then over in the properties tab over here on the right, notice at the very top you can change the text as well.
Good?
All right.
Yeah.
So now let's go ahead and let's run our application again now that we have a couple of things on the screen. So go ahead and hit play again. And by now your simulator should have launched. So it shouldn't take as long to launch it this time. So it should only, it should load here in a couple of seconds. And you should see something similar to what's on my screen, depending on which color background you picked and that kind of stuff. I might point out, though, if you picked a very dark background and you have a label with white text or black text on it, you might not see your text. All right, everybody see the output?
Yeah.
All right. So now, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and give ourselves a second screen in our application. So I mentioned that a view controller is a single screen in our application. So we're going to go over here to the right, and the guy in the upper left-hand corner, if you hover over it, is called a view controller. Now all of these yellow dudes are all view controllers of various types, and we're going to learn about several of them. But our go-to early move is just a plain Jane view controller, and it's actually going to be the guy we use most of the time. So we're going to take that and we're going to drag it out onto the screen. So just somewhere not inside the other one. Well, I mean, you could try to put it inside the other one. It's not going to work. So just somewhere out here. And it's going to look pretty similar to what your original view controller looked like. All right, so we're going to go ahead and resize this guy. So make sure you select that view controller. Go to the little shield, the property inspector. Change its size to 5.5 so it looks like an iPhone. Okay, now the reality is, just to explain what we're doing there, when it creates it as a that big square, what it's trying to do is it's allowing us to try to design our interface for all the different screens across all of Apple's products. So that would be all the iPads and all the iPhones and all the iPod touches. So the idea is we would design our interface as a square, and then through this thing called auto layout, it would automatically resize itself and manipulate itself to squeeze onto the various size screens. Typically, we're either targeting an iPhone or we're targeting an iPad. So what I like to do is I like to set up my simulated metrics to be shaped like an iPhone, and that's why I always pick the biggest iPhone, because it's using the form factor of an iPhone. I design my interface like that and just let it squeeze down to an iPhone shaped size that might be smaller, but it still looks like an iPhone. So I never use that square thing, even though it's kind of Apple's intention to design your applications very generically. Okay. So we have this second screen here. And go ahead and let's change the color of the background of this screen. So select the view. Pick whatever color you want. Maybe pick a different color. So we'll make this guy green on mine. And then I'm going to drag a label out here. So exact same thing we did before. I'll double click on that label. And I'm going to say page 2 on that guy. All right, so now when you're done with that, you should have 2 separate view controllers here on our storyboard. So this storyboard file is our way of designing our entire application. So we have 2 separate screens in our application, both existing here in this single storyboard file. Now, when we launch our application, though, the guy with the little arrow next to it will be our first screen. Okay? So now what we're going to do before we do anything else, just to see how we can change this, go ahead and just click and drag the arrow over to your new screen. What we just did is we changed which screen should launch with our application. Okay? So now if you hit play, for me, it'll be the green screen that says page 2 that launches.
That works for you guys? You drag the arrow over? Ready? It's okay. You can hold it there.
Yeah, if you have any questions or you missed something that I did, let me know. But just make sure you talk loudly because the microphone's only going to pick up so much.
Do that. Collapse this right here. Now slide over into the arrow. There's an arrow in front of your first view controller. You can just click that and drag it. So what that does is it means that when you run it now, this view controller, that's going to be your first screen. So if you hit play, that should change. What are you at on that crowd?
Are we good?
Yeah, I figured it out.
Okay. And like I mentioned, this whole thing is video recorded, so later on you'll be able to go back through and walk through this again, because what we're doing here is something you want to drill. Something I like to kind of talk about with programming is that it's like a sport. I think I mentioned that to you guys last time and the time before that, or I think just last time maybe, but regardless, even though what we're doing here doesn't seem too complex, until you do it a whole bunch of times, it's not going to become second nature. Right? So it'll be beneficial for you to sit down and build a brand new app, create a couple of views, change some colors, throw on some labels, just to get comfortable with that whole process. All right, because you want that to become second nature. All right, so in any case here, now because I have the arrow pointing at my second screen, that's the guy that popped up. Now, ideally, when we think about an iPhone app, we usually have a screen that leads to another screen. So we're going to go back and now we're going to get these guys connecting to each other. Now, keep in mind, we're using a whole bunch of Apple's built-in stuff right now to just make all of this easy. Certainly, we can consider that sometimes when you go from one screen to another, some extra logic must occur. All right, so we're going to learn eventually how some of that works, but right now we're learning kind of Apple's high-level tools for making this stuff happen. Okay, so I'm going to come back into my storyboard, and I'm going to drag that arrow back over to the original screen. Doesn't really matter, but it'll be easier to go from left to right here. All right, so now I want to provide a way to get from my first screen to my second screen when the application launches. So I'm going to go ahead and over here on my widget, so make sure your first screen is highlighted, so I just double click on it to make sure it's big, but usually when it's big on the screen like this, you know it's good to go. Go ahead and drag a button over here and just drop it somewhere underneath your Hello World label.
You do a search for the button. Do a search for the bottom.
The button should be pretty close to label. Some of your screens might look like a grid like mine does. Otherwise, if you click on the very bottom left, you can get a list view. that looks like this. So if yours looks like this, that's the list view, and button is right underneath label. And then as he pointed out, there's also a search down here where you can just type in BUT or something, and it'll show you the buttons.
Yeah, button back. No. Pardon? Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So now go ahead and double click on the button and let's just change the name and let's just say go to page 2. Something like that. That's going to be the name on it. You can make the name say whatever you want. All right, so now one thing that historically would happen is if you wanted to have a second page launch as part of your application, you would have had to write 2 or 3 lines of code behind the scenes to get this second view, the second view controller, to show up inside your application. Well, with storyboards, Apple has made it quite easy for you to get from one page to another as long as you don't want to do too much in that transition. All right, so right now we're not going to do anything in the transition. We just want to get to that second page. So go ahead and click on the button. Now hold down the Control key on the keyboard. And then click and drag from that button over to that second view controller. All right, and once you're over there and it's highlighted, let go. You can let go of the control button and the mouse button, and you'll get a little context menu like this. And the one you want to select is Show. This is called an action segue. So there's Show, Show Detail, Present Modally, Present as Popover, and then Custom. 99% of the time, we just want to show that other screen. So just click Show. And you'll see that a little segue line is created that goes between those two. All right. Well, now, if you go ahead and hit play, because we move the arrow back over to the pink screen, that should be the guy that shows up first. But if I hit the button that says go to page 2, my green screen shows up.
Work for everybody? Yeah.
So far, so good?
Yeah.
All right, so now we might want to go back to the pink screen. Now, if you look at our app right now, we have no way of getting back to that pink screen. So this is kind of I don't know if it's a downside, but this is something we need to consider with iPhone applications. If you're an Android phone user, every Android app has a back button, because Android phones have back buttons built into them. An iPhone does not. So we don't have a way of just going back to the previous screen. So if we want to get back to that previous screen, we have to provide a way to get back to that previous screen. All right. So we're going to go ahead and give ourselves a button on the green screen. And we'll double click on that, and we're going to say go back. Right, now, for starters, just to get this visually working, but it's going to end up working in the wrong way, let's go ahead and do our control drag thing again. So we're going to click on the go back button, hold down the control key, click and drag over to the pink screen, let go, and say show. So now the pink screen has a button that goes to page 2, and page 2 has a button that goes back to the pink screen. At least that's what it's going to visually look like to us. So after you've done that, go ahead and hit play. So make sure your pink screen is connected to the green screen is connected back to the pink screen. Then you should be able to hit go to page 2, and then go back, and it keeps going back and forth. Make sense?
Yes.
Now, one thing to visualize here, one thing to notice, is when you click the go to page 2 button, notice the green screen slides up from the bottom. When you hit the go back button, notice that the pink screen also slides up from the bottom. What's actually happening is every single time we click one of those buttons, a brand new view controller is being created in memory. So the very first time I hit the Go to Page 2 button, it's going to create a new green view controller and show it on the screen. When I hit the Go Back button, it is not going back to the pink screen I was just on. Instead, it's creating a brand new one and showing that on the screen. So I just clicked those buttons a whole bunch of times, so I maybe have 13 or 14 view controllers currently taking up my memory. And that's not really what I want. What I actually want is, once I'm on this screen and I hit the Go Back button, I want to just return to where I just came from. And we do not have a way of doing that through this control drag mechanism. Okay, so the control drag mechanism is convenient much of the time, but not all the time. So what we're going to have to do now is we're going to have to associate some code with that action. Okay? Hold on a second. Okay, we're going to have to associate some code with that. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to click on my little segue there. Make sure you've highlighted that. And I'm going to hit delete. That's going to disconnect the guy from the Go Back button. Sometimes it's hard to click it out there, especially if you get a lot of segues laying over each other. So something else you can do is if you click on that second view controller, you can go into over here on the left, under the controller, you can go down to the very bottom that says Show Segue to View Controller. You can click on it here, over here on the left. Because one thing that can sometimes happen is if you clicked on the wrong thing, you end up deleting an entire view controller. All right, so if that happens, just hit Command-Z, and that'll undo the bad stuff you just did. But if you're not sure you have the actual segue highlighted, the line, over here on the left, you can select it from the list, and then you can press delete, and that'll get rid of it. So kind of two different ways you can get at stuff. Probably two different ways you can get at stuff. All right? So I got rid of that, but now what we want to do is we want to go ahead and have our back button actually take us back to this guy. And that's going to require us to write a little bit of code. All right? Now, first of all, where do we write this code? We put this brand new view controller out here on the screen a few minutes ago. Now, when I click on this view controller, if we come up here, we're going to click on the little icon right to the left of the shield. All right, this is the identity inspector. This tells us what kind of animal this guy is. And this guy is something of type UI view controller. That's the class that governs this view controller here. Now, that's a class that Apple wrote. That's not a class that we have control over. All right, so if we want to do something special for this view controller, if we want to make it more unique than the one that Apple provided us, what we're going to have to do is create a new Swift file that is built in terms of that original and built in terms of a UI view controller, but then allows us to add some extra stuff. All right, so that's the next thing we're going to do. That was already provided for us over here on this original view controller. So this original view controller, if we click on his identity inspector, notice the name of the class is view controller as opposed to UI view controller. So this view controller class was provided for us right here. If you click over on the left, remember our three files, app delegate, view controller, and main storyboard. If you click on view controller and you go in here, notice we have a class named view controller, and he is of type UI view controller. Make sense?
Yeah.
All right. So we're going to create a second one of these for us. So what I'm going to do here is under this SCH dice roller, I'm going to right click. We're going to do new file. Make sure your iOS is selected. Source. We're going to select a Cocoa Touch class. And we're going to go ahead and hit next. And it's probably going to be defaulted for you, but just in case it's not, we're creating a new class that's going to be a subclass of, it should say UI view controller. If you hit the drop down on that, it should show you all the different things that we can subclass by default. But UI view controller is almost all the way up the top. That's going to be the one we're going to select. And we're going to...
Mike, hang on 1 second. Let me just make sure everybody's caught up.
Okay.
You guys have that? Yeah. Okay.
All right.
All right. Well, he's not there yet.
All right, so now we're going to give it a name. So I'm going to name this guy Page 2 VC for Page 2 View Controller. All right. So I'm going to pick a name that's I think a little bit less confusing than Apple's default view controller name that they gave us as part of this project. So Page 2 VC, go ahead and hit Next. And then it's going to have this window asking us, do we want to add it to our project, blah, blah, blah. Just hit Create. And that's going to give us a new file over here on the left. And I'm going to go ahead and just drag that file up right underneath our viewcontroller.swift file, just so it's kind of within the same little area as the other files we're working with.
Very good.
All right, so now we have this file here called Page2VC. And I'm going to go ahead and copy that file's name, because we need to go let our green view controller know that he is now one of those instead of a generic UI view controller. So we're going to go back out to our storyboard. I'll click on our green view controller here. We'll go up to the Identity tab up top. And where it says Class, and it currently shows a grayed out UI view controller, I'm going to click in there, and you can either paste in the Page2VC, or you can type in the Page2VC, or you can scroll down and find the Page2VC. Choose your poison.
How are we doing that? Page2VC? Did you copy it? It doesn't matter. Yeah, as long as you can paste it. Copy
It doesn't matter how you get that word there, just get it there.
Yeah. You copy that? So, moving forward, just think about how you write to code. No space. No, you don't need underscores, you don't need spaces.
All right, so we've given this guy a new identity. We've told him. Okay. Are we done at? We're done at 55 today.
I don't want to know. We're done at 3. So, don't do that. What time are we done? 3. We're done at 3, Mike.
Oh, okay. So we got 7 minutes. Okay. All right, good. So we've given this guy the identity that he's now a Page2VC instead of a generic UI view controller. And what's nice about that is we have control over Page2VC. So notice Page2VC is a UI view controller, but we get to write extra stuff in here if we want. So we have control over that class. All right, so now we can write stuff for that view controller. So we're going to go back out to our storyboard. And what I'm going to do here is we're going to select our go back button. And what might be helpful is if you kind of drag your get this green screen as far left on your screen as you can, because you're going to see what's about to happen. So now go ahead and click on the actual view controller itself, the little yellow circle up here for our green one. And then go up to these 2 little circles that are within each other up here called the Assistant Editor. When you click on that, what it's going to do is it's going to open up your Page2VC code next to your storyboard. And then you want to drag around on the view controller or the storyboard screen a little bit, just so you can kind of see your green screen with the button. Right, so
okay. Yeah. Well, Tyler has an older version, so he didn't have the 2 circles. He had the guy with the bow tie.
Okay. Get the newest version.
Okay, well, we'll get him updated for next time. Okay, we're ready when you are.
All right. So now I have the code on one side and I have my interface on the other side. So what we want to do is we want to associate an action with this button. So rather than using a built-in segue, we want to associate a programmatic action. So click on the button once, hold the control key, just like we did before, except now we're dragging into our code over here. All right? And notice it'll say insert outlet action or outlet collection.
Mike, should they put this in a specific location above the function?
I like putting it after view did load. We'll talk about view did load probably next time, but you can put it anywhere inside the class, but I like putting it immediately following view did load. I like view did load to be at the top. So once you've kind of got it to land between functions, make sure you don't land it inside of a function. It shouldn't let you, but just in case. You know, once you get it between functions, let go, and it's going to bring up this little context menu, and it's going to ask you what kind of thing do you want to create. The default is likely going to be something called an outlet. We do not want an outlet in this case. An outlet is how we get programmatic access to one of our widgets. So if I wanted to be able to change the text on this button.
One second, because I don't want them to miss this. So this is the editor, but what we want is we want the storyboard on this side, and we want the it's fine. Ready now? When next time we do this, I'll say drag. Yeah. Just follow what you want to do. Just follow that. Go ahead, Mike.
Okay. All right, so the default's going to say outlet on it. That's only if we would want an outlet if we wanted to like be able to change the text or something like that on this label. We'll see that eventually. But for right now, we actually want to associate an action with this button. So for the connection type, do the drop down and select action. All right, and then we're going to name that action. So we're going to call this guy back button pressed. And then go ahead and just hit connect. And this is going to drop some code in there for you. All right. So we're only going to have to write one line of code in here to make this work so we can see the same thing but happen in the correct way. And we're in our last minute, so let's just go ahead and do this. And if you want to go back and review the video, you can. So what I'm going to do is whenever this back button is pressed, I want to say self.dismiss view controller animated, and it fills in the rest of the stuff for you. And then just say true. And for completion, say nil. So ultimately, you want to have this line. Self.dismiss view controller animated.
It's 2 o'clock.
True, yes, I want it animated. And completion, don't do anything special. All right, so now it's all done. I should be able to run my simulator again. And now it'll work the same way as it worked before. I can click the Go to Page 2 button. I can click Go Back, but notice that this screen's going to slide down now instead of up. It's been dismissed from that page rather than a brand new one being introduced. That makes sense, guys? Okay. So now you've gone to one screen, gone to the next screen, and gone back.
Mike, hang on one second. Stay right. Yeah. Mike, so for the function, you have self.dismiss view controller animated, and then what do you have inside of there? You have true.
Right here. I have true for the first parameter, and then completion : nil, NIL for the second parameter.
So it's true, comma, and then completion. That would be good. Sure. So make sure it matches up then. Brandon, is your working? Self-doc. Oh. See it's down. So do you have the ID action function back button pressed? So compare your code to this right here. Compare yours to this up here. So you have the ID action function back button pressed. You have self.dismiss view controller animated. Then you have true, comma, completion, nil. Okay. Compare yours to mine. So come back to this. So this is just showing you that back here. So these are ID action function. Back true, comma, completion, nil. Okay, that's good. No? Yeah. So the math goes to that. It's harder than all the other tests. And Mike, I'm not so. Tyler's when he clicks the back button, he's getting thrown an error. The unrecognized selector. No, it's. Well, don't worry about it. We'll look at this next time. Okay?
Yeah, I'd have to see it to see what's going on.
Yeah, I'll look at it a little bit closer next time. And actually, what we can do, maybe next time in class, what I'll have them do is I'll have them delete that button, and I'll go through the connection with them all.
Okay. And I'll put this video up so they can follow it again if they want to just go to the last 10 minutes of the video and follow the button connection thing.
Okay. All right. That's cool, Mike.
All right.
All right. Thanks, buddy.
Yep. You take care.
All right. See you.
Bye-bye.